Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm sure that you can't see me because I got this big banner in the way and I got to remove it. No, that's not how you do it. I don't know how to take this off. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining Morning Coffee, another edition of Morning Coffee. Today, I have the members of the Minnesota Recovery Act that will be joining me this morning. And the Recovery Act is reparations for American descendants of chattel slavery for residents of St. Paul. And right now, I have Jeremy, and he will one of the members of the steering committee. He will be joining me. Good morning, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing, Minister Toya?
I am great. I am actually really, really good. How was the weekend?
It was pretty, you know how that Minnesota weather is. It was it was a little chilly, but we made it warm. Yeah,
I'm trying to get this thing from the middle of us. I don't know how to do it.
Take your time. Go ahead and take your time.
Banners. And overlay. There we go. There we go. I am I never knew how to do that. This was I got this fluctuating light. But good morning. How are you doing? Are you excited about the Minnesota Recovery Act?
Yeah, well, you know how we do, with the Recovery Act. Again, I'm very proud of the work we accomplished. The key piece to I would have to say the key piece to the Recovery Act is just the move forward. Because again, when we talk about reparations, and I can kind of go into this a little bit, but when we talk about reparations for, and you know me, you know how I do, reparations for foundational Black Americans.
Right.
When you're looking at it from that perspective, the one word that comes to mind for me is compensation.
Yes.
And I don't think that, that word gets into the discussion enough. Sometimes we kind of get, I would say, sometimes we basically get misdirected into other topics and other debates rather than focusing on, what is really needed, for our foundational Black community, which is compensation for the work, the sweat, the blood, tears that not only our ancestors have put in for this country, but us ourselves. You yourself, me myself. So in terms of compensation, now I can say, I can comfortably say that we are owed compensation by our federal, our local, and our state governments. So, so in terms of what that compensation entails, cash has to be included. There's no discussion about cash not being included. Sometimes people, again, want to redirect us into other conversations about economic programs, economic resources, and other terms that do not directly affect foundational Black Americans. And compensation for what we have been through is the key piece to our success. And the St. Paul Recovery Act it starts with that foundational piece. And that's why I'm glad that we were able to establish it. I'm proud that the St. Paul City Council stepped up, truly understood that there is a, hold on a second. I got this light in the background. Let me kind of darken my light real quick. Hold on a second, Sister Toya. Give me 1 second real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, yep, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can get that a little darker. Maybe I can possibly. Yeah, it's a little work here. Let me just see if I can
I
get
got
a
a
little.
light that keeps going in and out on me this morning. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to program it. It's like,
yeah, no, I'm here with you. I'm here with you because again, this is a conversation that I love talking to you about, and I love discussing with you. And the key piece to our success was the development of the St. Paul Recovery Act. Just the development of it and the organization of it. Because what it's going to do is it's going to provide a window of opportunity of resources for foundational Black Americans in the city of St. Paul. Now, the key piece is, what are those resources going to be? And again, one of those resources has to be, you know, and whether, I don't care how the program is done, but bottom line, a one-time cash payment needs to be made from that council up to the mayor.
right.
On behalf of foundational Black Americans.
You know, we were in a meeting the other night, and Councilwoman Jane Prince stated that she made recognition. She said, Toya, she said, I had to apologize because I have to stop saying that there's no way that there could be cash payment, or it might not be possible, because what I realized is that we spend millions and millions of dollars on sports activities here in St. Paul. And so that, just thinking logically, we can't say that there's no way that this is possible. But I am so grateful that foundational Black Americans, American descendants of chattel slavery, whatever it is we choose to call ourselves these days, are in the city of St. Paul will be getting reparations for the work that they've done. For the things that were lost and things that were owed. And people say, well, we didn't have plantations here. Why do we owe descendants of slavery money here? So why do we owe? Why would you say, Jeremy? Why is it that we owe foundational Black Americans anything? There are no plantations. Well, there was what our white counterparts would say. There are no plantations.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. I am a representative, number one, of the Rondo community. My family lived in the Rondo community for over 50 years. My grandfather, Pastor Theardis Williams, was a founder and the founder of Rock of Ages Missionary Baptist Church. That church was founded in the early 70s on Dale Street, at a time where University in Dale was going through a peculiar situation. At that time, there was a theater. There was a theater on Dale and University, and it was let's just say it wasn't your regular old movie theater. It was a movie theater for adults specifically. And my grandfather's church was a block away from that theater. And it was his congregation. It was his efforts. It was their work that created a situation where the city of St. Paul had no other choice
but to tear it down,
but to close that theater down. And it was all over the newspapers. It was a statement that foundational Black Americans would like to have their spiritual, religious program not be interrupted by a pornographic theater right down the street, where it could have had influence on its young congregation. And the city of St. Paul at the time, I mean, let's just call it what it is. I mean, at that time, at that particular time, they allowed the church, that congregation, to lead by example in regards to protesting how vulgar that was, how vulgar that look was for the city of St. Paul. And that's just an example of some of the modern day, I'm talking modern day white supremacy that my families had to endure. And I'm not, you know, when you talk about, okay, so, and I love the question. Yes, technically speaking, there were no plantations in the city of St. Paul, but the city of St. Paul destroyed a vibrant Rondo community.
Yes. People forget about that.
With a highway that completely eviscerated the people, forced the people to go either back down south or be economically deprivated and have to start from the ground floor up to compete with white residents, because let's just call it what it is. At that time, there were no immigrants that were migrant, that were a strong population in the city of St. Paul. During the 70s and during the early 70s, all the way up until the middle 80s.
Absolutely
St.
correct.
Paul, yep, St. Paul did not have a minority coalition that it looks like today. It was basically foundational Black, and it was white. The east side was white. Everything, like I love what Councilmember Jane Prince was talking about. Every business from Snelling over to the river was mostly owned by white people.
Yes.
When you look at the demographics of St. Paul, from Snelling all the way up to the Capitol, that was the Rondo community, including University, including Shelby, including Dale, including all of those avenues. All of those avenues had vibrant businesses that were established by foundational Black Americans. And that highway construction, not only did it eviscerate that community, its economic value, but it also took a population of foundational Black Americans out of St. Paul.
Yes. Let's welcome Darnella. Darnella just joined us. Hey, Darnella, how are you? You're looking exceptionally beautiful this morning. You're on mute. Sometimes Darnella's internet is a little slower than ours, but she's working it out. my thing about when people say, why do I owe you? Why, my parents didn't have any slaves. Why is it that you feel that we should pay you? It's like, okay, so if your father works a job and your father dies on that job, or dies and they're still owed a paycheck, what does the company do? It calls the next of kin and says, we have 1 or 2 or 3 final payments for your father, and we want you to come pick it up, or we're going to give us an address where we can mail it to, or whatever. They immediately pay the person who is listed as your emergency contact on that form. And I know this because I did payroll for 23 years. For 23 years of my life, I did payroll. So they immediately, good morning, Darnella. Just jump in when you're ready. When you unfreeze, just jump in. So like they immediately pay the emergency contact. It's the same thing with reparations.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Good morning, boo.
Good morning.
And not only that, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I in?
Yes, you are.
Am I in? Oh,
yes.
Good. Yeah, and not only that, it's the American way. When there's a debt due and there's interest accrued, that also is like they just wanted to keep moving without turning around to pay their dues, and they want this generation to benefit from it and hush us up at the same time and noticing the disparities, the gaps. They pride themselves in knowing how far behind we are, but they're also not the generation that's willing to pull us ahead and make it so no one is a victim of being the little old lady at the ATM. No matter what generation it is, you repair it. For me, for them to tell us we're not due reparation is like keep feeding a gluttonous pig, and the pig is fat. The pig is big, but the pig, you still feel the need to feed this big gluttonous pig over this small little piglet, and then you keep blaming the piglet for being small.
Don't nobody acknowledge
like
that,
in
like
America.
my friend Darnella.
Like they just keep going, and they always ask who pays reparations. If there's anything, say that again.
I just said no one makes an announcement to my friend Darnella. Go ahead. I was agreeing with you. I think she froze.
Okay.
Are you still there? She'll be back.
Well, let me piggyback from where Darnella was going with it, because she made an excellent point, because I know they had that reparations congressional hearing the other day.
Wednesday, I watched it. Did you watch it?
I watched it. I watched a little bit of it. Minister Toya, sometimes I gotta cringe when I start seeing some of these brothers start to talk like Larry Elder and Herschel Walker. And let me unpack a little bit of what Herschel Walker was talking about. And because some of the things that Herschel Walker was saying, let me be clear about this. Okay. When I talk to you, when I speak to you about Black history and some of the information that I've gathered, it's because I can speak to you freely as a foundational Black American who has looked up his history, who has read his books, who has studied his elders, and who has understood all the information provided for me is completely out there, where I can gather all of this and understand where it fits in my values. Okay. The reason why I had to say that before I talked about Herschel Walker is because you can clearly see that brother was being told, and he wrote a script on what to say.
Yes. Thank you.
And as elegantly as I can put it, this brother needs to go back to high school so he can understand English verbiage because some of those words that some of those words that they scripted for him, he just completely butchered. So,
I chalked it up to him being old. I was like, well, that's how old people are.
Okay, well, some of them words, when he came on with it, I said, oh Lord, have mercy. Again, because we have articulate historians who are completely in tune with grammar in English in regards to the terms and the issues that are at hand in our society. When you bring up a Larry Elder, let's talk about Mr. Black on Black crime, Larry Elder. The one thing I can definitely say about Brother Larry Elder is he doesn't talk about the grassroots. The grassroots has a whole nother agenda than people that were at that congressional meeting the other day. We have a completely different agenda. Part of our situation is what we need to do is, as a grassroots, we need to call these people out on the terms needed so they can know they do not speak for us. They do not speak for our issues. They do not speak for our concern. Some of these people are completely spoon-fed. Herschel Walker, spoon-fed brother. He grew up in the NFL. He grew up fighting for a living. That's what the NFL is about. It's about fighting, hitting your head for a living. And
that field don't look. You go from the plantation to the football field, but you still got white master telling you what you can and cannot do. Let's just keep it 100. No matter how much they're paying those athletes, they still have white master telling you what to do. And Darnella, I know you're not on the screen, but if you can hear us and you can talk, just jump in whenever you're ready. So we were.
Yeah, it was hard for me to listen to Larry Elders. I was like, that's what happens when you are living in a white man's world and are welcome to his privilege. You forget somehow what is supposed to be established. And one thing that stuck out when Herschel Walker was talking, he said he was studying reparations for the last year. I'm 47. I've been studying reparations for the last 36 years. And one thing I noticed, a lot of them keep on commenting on John Connors. It's a shame that a black man had to present and create a bill that was never even heard. So you not only disregarded our grievances, he was in a place of business and they disregarded his grievances for 40 years. So now we're going to hail him like he's a martyr. Yeah, he's a martyr to the undiplomatic process of democracy that's failed to respond to reparations. And now it's 40 years later and nobody thinks that it's time for them to cut the check. And the reason why money has to be implemented is because money is where the gap lays the greatest. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Give us the money. We'll fix our own education. As long as you don't prohibit us, we'll buy our own houses. Long as you don't think that you own the cars to our vehicle, the vehicles to our car because we register them. All of this language that belongs to chattel slavery is a problem for me because they keep on living, putting us in two different systems. The American system, which we are born Native Americans, and the United States of America, which makes us chattel slavery. Over here, we're sovereign. Over there, we're chattel slavery. And to use the word black makes us not have a standing in the maritime court order and law, the way things is established here. They're playing with the words. And as long as, like you said, Herschel Walker, you could tell that you're using words of education, but you're not using them in a way that it liberates us as far as reparations. He's saying the words, but like saying the word black for them, it excuses them. So when a cop kills a black man, if you keep using the word black according to their legalese and chattel slavery status, you're excommunicating yourself out of being a human, a person, you know. But over here in America, the same place we are as native African descendants of chattel slavery, as those free people in bondage over here where we were born free, that's what we're fighting. And they know it. They know it's that language that keeps letting a cop get off, because when you say you black, you're not a man. Okay, well, we want you not only with reparations to establish being black is something then. You know what I'm saying? Like, we want our grandparents' 401k plans that never were established. Yes, that money exists somewhere and we want it. You know what I'm saying? Who pays for reparation? If tobacco still exists, that industry. Sugar, that industry. Insurance companies, that industry.
Wells Fargo.
Tax-free entities that shouldn't be tax-free in a low. Right. So it's like 5,000 ways to pay back the slave. But when they send a message of I'm not going to give you any money, that's saying to me, take the back door entry, slave, because you still not coming in the front door. That's what it feels like when you tell me I can have everything, but you can't have no money. That doesn't even have any gold backing or any real standing behind it.
Right.
So yeah, we want it all. We want it all so we can disperse our quality of life, and not only that, so we can detour their chattel slavery of life, because they found a way to keep us in bondage for the sake of the American economy.
You know, when we talk about the wealth gap, and
we work for them as long as we ain't free.
Right. When we talk about the wealth gap and whites having 90% of the wealth and us having 2.65% of the wealth, imagine that, right? Let's look at this eyeliner pencil. This is my eyeliner pencil. And so whites have that much of the wealth, right? They have that much of the wealth, and say it's about 90% of that pencil, right? So then we have other people have that much of wealth, and right there at the tip where it's shaved off at, can people see that? I don't know if you can see the tip. Right there at the tip where it's shaved off, that's our wealth. That is our wealth right there at the tip of this pencil. And whites have that much. Other immigrants have about that much. Other nationalities have that much, and that's us. Right there at the tip. How dare you tell me that I am not deserving to have at least this much of the wealth? How dare you tell me that after all that we have been through, after redlining, after Jim Crow, after slavery, after being kept as pets, after having our children snatched away at the womb, right, and sold to another slave master, how dare you tell me after the boat ride over here where I had to lay next to my dead father, and not only that, they weren't stopping at McDonald's to give us nothing to eat. We had to eat the flesh of the dead corpse that's next to us. It was so much that went into it. You owe us. Pay us what you owe us. It's time that the reparations are paid. And I don't have time to deal with Uncle Tom's that act like they want us to have reparations, but they really don't. They act like they. Oh my God! As I
was surprised they found him.
Let me say this, because there's a lot of emotion when it comes down to understanding what we are compensated for. But let's just do it like this. From a business standpoint, and the reason why I have to say from a business standpoint is because there's too much language going on nowadays. People are talking about African American, descendants of American slavery, American descendants of slavery, chattel slavery. Hold on. colonial slavery. What was that African girl saying the other day? Colonial slavery. We're colonized. We are colonized slavery. There's too. What it does is it's here to confuse you. It's here to confuse you because Darnella said it best.
Yes.
You are deserved a compensated check from the federal government, from your state government, and from your local government.
Yes.
All three of them owe you, and they owe you significantly. And the reason why you're getting confused is because they don't want you to stay on point with what you're supposed to be on, which is getting your check. And
why did they try to make us feel guilty? Guys, answer this to me. You guys know how I feel about reparations, and when people in white supremacy and all that. I'll go to the tilt to fight against white supremacy. But why is it that white supremacy is fighting so hard to make us feel guilty, as if we don't, as if we're receiving a handout, or even with Darnella fought for rights of those who are receiving public aid for years, right? So even with that, they're saying, that's a handout. Black people are lazy. That this, that, and the other, and would not increase those grants. Have not increased those grants in 20 years. I think they just increased that grant, right? So why is it that we allow white supremacy to dictate to us that we're lazy, or we are not owed something, that we need to go out and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps? And a lot of us fall victim to believing that. What do you think, Darnella? I think she might be frozen.
They have a slave master's mentality, because when we ask for reparations, they shun us. But when coronavirus hit, they knew to understand to put those economic stabilities up under their families so they do not fall beneath a certain poverty level. So they understand the quality of life and how it should be upholded, but they ass is committing genocide by rejecting us reparations. Just like how they should not have said, everybody get a stimulus check, but if you owe child support, you don't. Just because you owe child support do not mean you are not a victim or could be a victim to coronavirus. That right there is a nice way of saying we're not going to take care of the slaves. Yes. Trust me, those languages that they use so well is a way to include or exclude. And not only did they reject who predominantly is African-American man that's running behind on child support, because they start young and they charge children, even though we know that everybody has their own choices. But the mere fact is you charge these children for being inadequate parents all the way through their life. And now within the system, you charge them and prohibit them and prohibit them and prohibit them. And that is all for me, prohibiting people during that pandemic and not allowing people to get those stimulus. That to me that was genocide. It looks different when you're on the outside.
I think she froze up again. Jeremy,
maybe
I'm
we
pose
didn't
the same
feel
question
violated because maybe.
Okay. The key.
Hello.
Yep, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I heard Darnella. Darnella's still cool.
Hello.
Cool.
I think my things.
Yeah, I think you're freezing up, Toya.
Hello.
Can you hear us? We can hear you.
It's freezing.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're freezing, Toya.
I'm going in and out. Yeah, they have a clever way of using the law against us. And don't forget, when we go to court, it's our court system is operating on a maritime law. That means we're across the waters. We're in the sea. So they're playing legal games with us as if we're still the slave property of the master. So they haven't put us in a position where they should negotiate with us yet. Not yet. When they stop telling us that we're not legally due money of a system that we are all putting money into this system, it's not just their taxpayers' dollars. Like black person, your money has just not been counted over here yet. Yes, it has. And I want to tell you what to do with some of it. I want you to give it back to some of my people that
That's
were
right.
originally
Right.
here. Do you know in the last stimulus, the first stimulus, they gave Alaskans reparations for being natural born Alaskans in the first
$8 billion.
stimulus COVID package.
$8 billion. Do you hear me?
Why?
$8 billion they gave to Native Alaskans. Without question. No one said, is that coming out of my taxpayer dollars? No one asked any questions. Matter of fact, they didn't even mention it. You had to read that part. And what they do count, they bank on for Americans, is that we've gotten so used to digital technology and social media that we're not going to take the time out to read the fine print. Right? We already didn't read the fine print, but what they're banking on is that we're not reading the fine print and these bills that they are paying. In the CARES Act, they gave these people $8 billion. What did they do specifically for African-American business owners? A lot of us were cut out of those business loans. A lot of us didn't receive PPE. A lot of us didn't receive the money that was given to white businesses. What did they do for? I'm still waiting on my stimulus check, but it's okay because I understand that it was not meant for me. It was meant for those who don't look like me, so that they don't end up impoverished. As far as they're concerned, we're already impoverished. What we didn't have, we can't miss.
Yeah, what was that? No, what was the question again? Because I kind of got you.
And you know, when it comes to reparation, we not only deserve cash, we own that Bible. That Bible is a spoil of the war in the Gentiles' possession right now. They did not come with any scriptures. The Gentiles did not come with any scriptures. Let's remember that. Yes. Our reparations go long, far, and deep.
Yeah,
starting with that Bible.
God
and
said
ending
the last
with
shall
that
be first
check.
and the first shall be last.
And I think there's going to be a moment. There should be a moment when...
I said we want to get biblical. God has already made the promise.
It's coming.
Right?
We just gotta black truth. Stop killing. If we could just stop killing, I mean that ceasefire is so important for me. While we trying to seek reparations, not only on the state and federal level, I just think everybody that made it this far deserve to live and deserve.
Jeremy, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Because all right.
Hey, pose that question back to me, Sister Toya.
Okay, so I don't remember, Jeremy.
Well, I kind of remember a little taste of it because you were talking about why do we think we were, we're
always talking about them thinking that we were lazy and why is it that they feel that when we ask for reparations, it's a handout and they want to say, go and pull yourself up by your bootstraps when we never had boots to begin with. You can't pull yourself.
This is the key piece to it. Okay. In terms of what we are asking for, which is economic compensation, money. When you're talking about a system that was built on white supremacy, the whole point of leaving you where you are is because they need to deflect from you. They know the kind of money they owe you. Mm-hmm. If every Black American, if every foundational Black American received reparations today, there would be no more white supremacy. So, in terms of the power structure that this country was built and created on, let's call it what it is. I'm going to call it for what it's worth right now. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment in the Constitution were written in there specifically for foundational Black Americans. It's never been applied to us. They've never given it to us. They've totally ignored us. The benign neglect policy is completely in effect, as you can see with the Biden administration and, of course, with the Trump administration. What we're doing is we are alerting them that if they don't do it, if they don't understand that this is a business transaction when it comes down to voting in these congressional Black Caucus members, when it comes down to voting in these mayors, these senators, these representatives, if they don't get the picture, they're going to learn the hard way by not getting back in and also being called out in regards to who they are and what side they're really on.
Yes.
Reparations means the main reason why they do not, and they argue that it's a handout and that they're just giving something to Black people and that white people nowadays, they had nothing to do with it. The whole point on deflecting you is because they need to keep you on the bottom of the totem pole.
Yes,
That's how the system works.
And then and they want to make it seem as if they are helping Black people. So this is what they do. They make a pathway to immigration. And they bring in African immigrants to this country who are not owed reparations, who are not going to make the claim to reparations. What they're going to do is come over and live the so-called American dream off the backs of foundational Black Americans, and then have the audacity to tip your nose at me and call us lazy because you're drenched in this American dream. Let's keep it 100, Jeremy. When we talk about the American dream, nobody's sitting in Africa saying, oh, I want to go over there and be like the Black people. No, the African dream, the American dream to them is the life that white people live in this country. I promise you, it's not that Joe Biden cares about immigrants having a pathway to citizenship. It's about the fact that we want to let you know, foundational Black Americans, we want to let you know, those descendants of chattel slavery, that we don't need you anymore. There's a group of people that we can raise up instead of you. Take those, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment and apply to them, and you won't have a voice. We don't need your vote. That's why he came in on the first 100 days. Good morning, Jane. That's why he came in on the first 100 days, creating a pathway to citizenship. And then when we identify these problems, Jeremy, they call us xenophobic.
I love that you brought that up. Hey, how you doing, Jane? It's good to see you,
Good,
Jane.
great to see you both. Sorry you're late.
That's okay. I'm glad to have you. Let me introduce you. This is Councilwoman Jane Prince, and she was very instrumental in getting the St. Paul Recovery Act passed.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. It's been an incredible experience to work with TRAHERN Cruz and with the St. Paul Recovery Act Steering Committee. I've learned so much. You all put that resolution together. It's extremely powerful. And then your committee went to my colleagues, and every one of them signed on as a sponsor. And that is not what always happens. And I mean, truly, I thought it would take some time. I thought there'd be some desire for us to kind of kick it around for a while before we actually passed it. But the committee set the goal of January 13th to get the council to pass the resolution 2 days before Martin Luther King's actual birthday. And we passed it unanimously at that point. So all the credit goes to you, Minister Toya, Jeremy, and the rest of the steering committee. Just a great group. I'm so proud.
Who's not on our steering committee. Her name is Monica Stinson. She actually put in majority of the research that went into the resolution. She's a Green Party member. She lives in Indiana, and she's also on our National Black Caucus. And a great deal of the research, and I just wanted to give her a shout out and thank her very much, because a lot of what we see in the resolution came from the research that Monica Stinson did. And thank you, Monica. We really, really appreciate you.
Yes, thanks, Monica.
And so we were just talking about the Biden administration and how they came in and did the pathway to citizenship. And Jeremy was going to go into that. Go ahead and finish up, Jeremy.
Well, okay. So the one thing I would have to say, and I'm glad you're on, because I can speak to this kind of. I mean, and I'm gonna talk about St. Paul specifically, because I've lived in St. Paul for 44 years. My mom came to St. Paul in, the early 1960s, and so did my dad, So in terms of St. Paul, for example, when you look at the demographics of St. Paul had an extremely vibrant economic area. When I talk about the Dale Street area and I talk about the Silk area specifically, the reason why I'm targeting those areas specifically is because I want you to look at how the demographics and the diversity has changed because of immigration in St. Paul specifically. So, for example, when you look at the Balltown area, it was predominantly an Asian and Hmong area. When you look at the Midway area, that's more predominantly I would call a modern day African descent area. So, for example, you have a lot of immigrant Africans that kind of provide the resources, own the businesses, and kind of stay in tune with that community because it is a community in itself. I would say the rec center has kind of helped enhance that community, in some sort of way, just given, the youth and adults and avenues and a place to go to. When you look at the West Side community, again, when you look at the Latin community on the West Side in terms of economic business, economic resource, the vibrance of that community, again, they do have different businesses, different nonprofits that help that community prosper. So, immigration in St. Paul has not helped foundational Black Americans. It hurt foundational Black Americans. It's taken away businesses. It's taken away opportunities. It's taken away resources. What St. Paul is supposed to provide is an emergency stopgap to those concerns coming from the Black community, because regular citizens can clearly see that it is very difficult to establish licensing, property ownership,
Yes.
and land development in St. Paul, whereas other communities have complete access to land ownership, economic resource, and property ownership. So when we talk about immigration, and let's just call it what it is, Black people helped immigrants get to this country.
We fought for the 1966 Immigration Rights Act. We fought hard for them. First, we felt by ourselves in this country. And what America knew is that we felt alone. And if some way before these immigrants can get to this country, we can get to them and let them know that these people are lazy. These are, if you interact with them, you can run the risk of losing or being deported. You can run the risk of not being eligible for certain refugee aid or certain immigrant aid if you interact with these people, because that was the way to keep us divided and separated, to make one group look down on the other group that fought so hard for our brothers and sisters. I want to let my African brothers and sisters know we loved you. That's why our people brought you here, because we wanted to have that connection with you. But when you come and you're become subject to white supremacy and that white supremacy conditioning, and you forget about those of us who came here and fought on your behalf, and that you're riding off the backs of, and they pour in those economic resources into you and forget about us. It seems like there should be a sense of camaraderie, but there's no camaraderie, right? When we speak to it, Councilwoman Price, we as Black people are identified as xenophobic. We don't like immigrants, and that's not true. Right.
Absolutely not. And I can't account for it. I think that, you know, when I look at the history of this country, without question, African Americans were brought here against their will and were enslaved, and we all know that it didn't get better. And I think that as a society, we have a history of treating all people of color with less regard than the dominant white culture. So, you know, I don't probably know as much about the differences between how the various groups get along. I mean, one story I know, I'm originally from the Boston area, and each subsequent group of immigrants that came in were looked down by the previous ones. So, so when, you know, the Italians came, they were kind of the bottom of the barrel. And then they were followed by the Irish, who then the Italians looked down on, and so on and so on. So I think to some extent, as an immigrant nation, you know, we call ourselves a nation of immigrants in a melting pot. We're not a melting pot. The various groups kind of try to figure out how to succeed. And I guess we've created a situation where it's a zero-sum, there's a perception that it's a zero-sum game, and that if I succeed, somebody else has to fail. And it shouldn't be that way in this country. You know, I just love that Paul Wellstone quote, "We all do better when we all do better." Why we act like we can't create a world in which everybody has an active role in building a better country, and we can all be successful. But, you know, I guess to some extent it's the white culture that has pitted the various immigrant groups against each other and against African Americans. But we need to fix it, and the world of the future is going to be black and brown. It's not going to look like me. So I think
those black and brown people are not going to be us either. It's going when we say, okay, so when we say black and brown people, it's not necessarily American descendants of chattel slavery. That's why we're so adamant about not being BIPOC. We're so adamant about not just being black. We're so adamant about not being African American, because you can be from Africa and have American citizenship and you become African American. So, but those black, if we're gonna maintain the American descendants of chattel slavery, or foundation of Black America, reparations have to be a part of that package. It doesn't matter if all of America is black and brown. If those who've created this country, those who are natives to this country, black natives to this country, are dying off in massive rates. Because when you can't feed your family, when you are constantly incarcerated, when you're being shot down by police, what is the likelihood that this specific we have done it? We exceeded our life expectancy in this country. How we've done it is only by the grace of God. Because if I look at statistics and over the last 401 years, there's no way only a God that loved us could have kept us on.
Where did Toya go?
We must have went out. I can pick up kind of. Well, Jane, I love where you were going with it, you know, with the perspective where you were, because Toya's absolutely right. When it comes down to St. Paul Pacific, reparation, the way we were able to pass that St. Paul Recovery Act was your counsel.
Right.
Now is the time for us to take a forefront level, whether it be state or federal. We need to show these constituents how reparation can be administered on a high level to Black people.
Right.
Because again, let's be clear. There is a vibrant African business community in St. Paul. When I,
Yes. Yes.
when I say
Yeah.
African, I have to use the term African because I am a Black Aboriginal. My people built this country. Those immigrant Africans, they were migrated here. They were
Yes.
allowed to come here on the backs of my ancestors.
Right.
And they jumped right over me. They jumped right over my generation. They were able to establish credit in my city. They were able to establish financial backing in my city. They were able to establish resources. And when you look at, for example, young barbers who are cutting like crazy, foundational Black Americans, they can't get a loan anywhere.
Mhm.
They can't get a loan to open up nothing. You know, you look at these cosmetologists, these sisters in St. Paul who really want to open up their own businesses, they can't get a loan anywhere. They can't open up a cosmetology business. So,
And then the laws were changed where anybody can do hair now. You don't have to go. As long as certain things you can braid. It used to be you had to have a license to braid hair. You had the license to touch somebody's hair. I went to college school when I was 20 years old. I graduated. My grandmother did hair for all of her life. She paid my tuition, everybody's tuition. She took care of her whole family, owned a salon in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago. However, now, a sister goes to school, spends 18 to 24 months in barber school. An African immigrant can come open a salon doing hair. As long as you're not processing chemicals, she can own the same hair salon that it took you that took you 24 months to graduate and be able to go out into the world and do hair. But they changed the laws where you don't have to be licensed anymore. As long as you're not working with chemicals, you can go do hair. And what they do is, you don't see African Americans. We can braid. We know how to do nails. We know our texture of our hair. They have these contracts set up specifically for African immigrants, Hmong immigrants, Asian immigrants. But where are those contracts that should be set aside for Black Americans?
Mm-hmm. Well, clearly the resolution is clear that what we're talking about are American descendants of chattel slavery. And a really interesting article to read is from the New England Journal of Medicine in November, which concluded that in order to address Black-white health disparities, which are the worst in the nation, and COVID has shown that they believe the only way to get at that is through reparations, that just simply nothing we've done has worked. And they conclude that, of course, as we all know, that all the healthcare disparities come from all the other disparities.
Yes.
That we have kept African Americans from being able to achieve generational wealth, home ownership, educational equity, economic prosperity. I mean, the whole thing. And that article is very clear that, it's all about keeping people from having access to power and wealth. And that's what our country has done, and African Americans have suffered the most mightily. I hate to do this. I am supposed to be in another meeting. I would love to come back, Minister Toya. I don't know how much longer.
Well, we have 2 minutes left. If you could just tell people how to get involved.
I can stay through the end. I would love to come back and continue this conversation, because I have learned so much from working with all of you, and we have a lot more to learn as a city, and you are taking the time and leading us through this, and that's where the leadership really needs to come from. So I'm incredibly grateful.
And I, for one, want to thank you all, but Councilwoman Prince, I want to thank you for not coming in and acting as a white savior. but being teachable and remaining humble and wanting to actually in your heart of hearts, because what comes from the heart reaches the heart. We have a saying in our community, if what you're doing you actually believe in is in your heart of hearts, it will reach others' hearts. So when I met you and as I continue to work with you, I understand that the things that you are doing to help the Foundation of Black Americans is actually what you believe in your heart. And I appreciate that, because that doesn't happen often. And so I, for one, want to thank you for being the person that you are. I want to thank you for seeing something in Trend that helped with the work that he was doing and which brought us into the work. And so I just want to thank you, and I applaud you for not having that. Oh, I'm a white woman who's going to come save these Black people in St. Paul, and I got to tell everyone, she has never ever taken on that role. Never came in. She's always, I want you guys to lead on this. I want to learn. I'm teachable. And I love that about you. And as a minister, I love everyone, but that doesn't mean I love everyone's characteristics. I love your characteristics. I love you as a person, because God did not have to place you and give you the heart that he has. So I want you guys to tell us how to get involved, who you are. We're going to wrap this up. I thank you guys for coming to Morning Coffee with Minister Toya. We're going to start off with you, Councilwoman, and then Jeremy, and then we're going to be out of here.
Well, thanks, Minister Toya. So you want me to talk about how to get involved?
Yes.
Okay, I am going to give people, right now we're in the process of setting up the city website, but in the meantime, just send an email to me if you want to be on the supporters list and to be on the list to get updates and to get involved. My email is Jane, JANE.Prince, like the rock star, at St. Paul, STPAUL.gov, GOV.
Thank you so much. And Jeremy, tell us, just wrap us up what you do and how people can, how important this is, and we can just wrap it up and get out of here.
Yeah, again, I just want to thank you, Minister Toya, for having me on. Council Member Jane Prince, I appreciate all the work you did for us. And, with me personally, I appreciate, all the tough conversations me and you had to have in order for us to do stuff right for Black people. And that's just, for you to even listen to those conversations and understand is more than what words can talk about. TRAHERN knows I'm gonna give him a shout out because of all the hard work he has did.
Amazing guy.
Yeah, very amazing guy, outstanding dude, and we're gonna keep fighting for foundational Black Americans in St. Paul. Again, I'm part of the steering committee that helped get a resolution passed by the city of St. Paul. People can get a hold of me at ejeremy, that's EJEREMY 20@yahoo.com. Again, I'm a steering committee member with Minister Toya, and I just thank you for having me on today.
I want to thank you guys both, and big shout out to TRAHERN Cruz for bringing us all into this work. Amazing gentleman out here doing the work, out here fighting for reparations every day of his life. And we have to say we appreciate him. Thank you guys for coming on. I thank you, Jane. I thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much.
And Jeremy, we here. We've been here since day one, right?
Yeah, you
we
got
down
it.
like 4 flat tires, right? So I just want to thank you guys. I loved all of you. I love the work that we're doing, and much more success. And and let me say this: I'm not in Councilwoman Princess Ward, but if you are, I fully put my support, my heart, and and support her passion and her views and whatever it is that she does. And if you don't know her, get to know her. If you haven't met her, get to meet her, because this is a woman that you want to support your area, support your family, support what you're doing in your neighborhood. I thank you all. I love you.
You're so generous, Minister Toya. I'm sure I have constituents who have a lot of issues with what I'm not right. So
that's okay. We're never going to all be perfect, but that you try. It's that you try. So I'm just saying, we love you. We love you too, Jeremy. And we're family in the steering committee, and we're gonna back each other. I love you guys. I'll talk to you later. Thank you for having.
Right on.
Bye bye.
Thanks.